My dream is to build the world's biggest coffee company rooted in the world's second largest source of coffee.
Nguyen Coffee Supply recently secured $2.6 million in funding from a diverse group of investors.
The label doesn't say product of Vietnam or Vietnamese coffee beans, it just says coffee.
I want to show the world that Vietnamese coffee is just as good as other coffee beans from other places around the world. It's a long journey ahead, but I'm confident we will get Vietnamese coffee there.
As the first specialty Vietnamese coffee company within the United States to use fresh, roasted, single-origin Robusta beans from Vietnam, Nguyen Coffee Supply put everybody in awe not only for its fresh, delicious, bold, and nutty specialty coffee, but also for the whole lot of story behind a dream to elevate Vietnamese coffee to its well-deserved place. And the woman behind this quest is with us today in Talk Vietnam. She's Sahra Nguyen, an award-winning documentary filmmaker, a coffee enthusiast, and now turning to a business owner of a much-loved brand, Nguyen Coffee Supply. Hi, Sahra.
Hi, G.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time.
Yes.
And I want to say congratulations on the launch of Cold Brew, your Cold Brew coffee line.
Thank
right?
you so much.
At Whole Food.
Yes, thank you.
So for the first time now, American nationwide in the U.S. can enjoy your coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit the significant move, of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So Whole Foods is considered one of the most famous specialty, natural, premium supermarkets in the country. They are an industry leader, and for many folks who have food brands, they're considered the hardest, the most toughest supermarket to get into because they have very, very high standards around quality.
Right.
And so this year, in 2023, we are now launching into every Whole Foods in the nation. So from 15 stores in New York to over 550 stores in the country with our cold brew cans. You know, when we were accepted into Whole Foods, it really was a big step to changing the perception and narrative of Vietnamese coffee because it signaled to the industry and also to consumers, if Whole Foods can accept single origin, fresh roasted Vietnamese coffee, then Vietnamese coffee can also be premium and specialty.
I'm sure it's not easy to get onto the shelves of Whole Food. And maybe it's better to start with the question, why you but not them?
Yeah.
Right? So how did you do it?
Oh gosh, it was actually very hard. So we launched the company in 2018, and I remember it took us over 2 years to get Whole Foods to say yes. I remember I emailed them in 2020, introducing our Vietnamese coffee to them. We roasted fresh in Brooklyn, Arabica, and Robusta. And at that time, they said, oh, we don't carry Robusta. And they said, we only carry Arabica. And I said, okay. And so we just stayed in touch. And so from 2020, for the next couple of years, we just we focused on telling our story to the public. We focused on educating folks. And then by 2021, the person who I was emailing with, they said, it seems like our stance around Robusta is changing around here. So let's talk about bringing you in, right? And then by 2022, we were able to launch our coffee beans into Whole Foods New York.
I'm so curious, what motivated you to start with coffee?
Yeah.
Where does that passion about coffee come from?
Around 2016, I noticed that Vietnamese iced coffee, Cafe Sera, was becoming very trendy in New York City. It reminded me of when matcha, chai, boba was also becoming trendy in the US.
Right.
So in the US, I was seeing this macro trend of Asian beverages in America, and Vietnamese iced coffee was becoming the next trend.
Right.
However, every time I ordered the Vietnamese iced coffee, it was never Vietnamese coffee beans, right? It was very sour. And I would ask the barista, what's in this Vietnamese iced coffee? And they'd say, oh, it's our house Ethiopian or our house Colombian, and we add sweetened condensed milk to it. And I thought to myself, that's not enough. That's not good enough, right? And I saw that there was an interest in engaging with Vietnamese culture.
And that was not even Vietnamese coffee.
It wasn't Vietnamese coffee, right? But there was this interesting thing happening in American culture where they wanted to connect with Vietnamese culture. They're interested in it, but they didn't have the right access or product to engage in it in the right way. Right. And then from there, this is around 2016, I started searching all the big coffee companies, Blue Bottle, Stumptown, La Colombe, Intelligentsia. I walked to all the Whole Foods, and I could not find one single origin Vietnamese coffee bean in the market. And I thought, this is really strange. Why can't I find this? And I did a little Googling. And then from there, I learned that Vietnam is the second largest producer of coffee in the world. That was kind of my first light bulb moment where I was like, wow, how did I not know about this fact? How did I not know that Vietnam is a major contributor to coffee experiences globally? This made me feel like, oh, Vietnam has been rendered invisible in the coffee conversation.
Right.
Similar to a lot of my stories that I was working on in media, a lot of folks that I told their stories about, they were also invisible or not represented in the media.
Right.
So that was a connection between my previous path and building the coffee company.
Prior to being a Vietnamese coffee entrepreneur, she lives in the consciousness of the American public as an activist and an award-winning filmmaker. She won the 2018 National Association for Multi-Ethnicity in Communications, or NAMIC, Vision Award with her NBC's documentary series, Deported.
He brought me to a room. There was just a bed with sheets and a pillow, and I just sat there.
Hi, Emmett.
She has also appeared on TV as hosts for several programs. However, while being a storyteller, she notices something.
Working as a full-time freelancer in New York City, I drank a lot of coffee. I noticed that Vietnamese iced coffee was becoming increasingly trendy until I tried it, and 9 out of 10 times I was utterly repulsed because what I found was these coffee shops weren't using Vietnamese coffee to make their Vietnamese iced coffee. I felt inspired to do something about this problem.
And a journey to Vietnam in 2016 changed the course of her life. The then media darling and documentary filmmaker found her real passion for Vietnamese coffee when she connected with a family friend who was a farmer in Đà Lạt. After tasting Vietnamese coffee, she knew she had to bring it to the US. Today, the Robusta beans roasted in New York and its cold brew option are sold widely across the United States and Canada. Nguyen Coffee Supply's revenue has grown 24 times in 2 years since 2020, even throughout the pandemic. The news also attracted investors who understand Sahra's mission to highlight Vietnamese in the broader Asian American culture.
Nguyen Coffee Supply recently secured $2.6 million in funding from a diverse group of investors, more than 2/3 of whom are Asian Americans.
Her coffee have won several awards, including one for BevNet, an outlet specialized in beverages' best new products in 2022. Now that the pandemic has eased, Nguyen Coffee Supply can only look forward to even more success.
When you mentioned Robusta, American consumers and also people at the store didn't seem to be very interested in Robusta. So why do American consumers prefer Arabica rather than Robusta?
Yeah, so I would reframe that question a little bit because I actually feel like from my experience building this company, my experience in interacting with consumers around the country, it's not that American consumers prefer Arabica, it's that American consumers have only been given the option of Arabica because the major coffee companies in the US, specifically the specialty coffee market, they only offer Arabica. Oh. Yeah, so it's been very interesting.
So like big companies dictate
exactly
the taste and the choices of
yes,
consumers.
exactly.
Okay.
Because in the industry, there is a stigma against Robusta. However, when I talk to consumers, they have no idea about the stigma, right? They've never heard of it. So there is a disconnect between the industry and consumers. Because from my experience, when working with consumers, the more consumers try our coffee and they try Arabica and Robusta, the more folks are like, I really like Robusta. You know,
from the taste?
From the taste.
Okay.
The taste. Like, I prefer the flavor and the taste of Robusta. They're like, it's so smooth, it's so nutty, dark chocolatey, it goes really well with milk and sugar. Because a lot of Arabica in the US specialty market is very fruit forward, is very acidic, right? And it's not bad. And there's some people who like Arabica and there's some people who like Robusta. However, American consumers haven't really been given the full range of options.
I see. It seems like the narrative of coffee has been set. And if you want to change it, if you want to, improve the quality of Robusta, you must have some belief in Robusta.
Yes.
So explain to me why, and why do you think that Robusta is maybe the future of coffee, wave?
One, Robusta is known to be a more resilient crop. right? No product is immune to climate change. However, research has shown that Robusta can endure rising temperatures better than Arabica. Robusta can also be grown in various altitudes and elevations, whereas Arabica requires a very high elevation. Right. And also, because Robusta has double the caffeine content of Arabica, that caffeine content acts as a natural pest repellent. So it's very easy to grow, which means it also relates to an economic justice issue because the barrier of entry for farmers to grow coffee is lower for Robusta than Arabica. It's very expensive to grow Arabica, and it's also more volatile to grow Arabica in the face of climate change, where if farmers experience crop failure with Arabica, it puts their livelihoods at risk, right? And also, because of high caffeine content, it's more pest repellent. Robusta is known to produce a higher yield per volume, right? So you get more coffee beans, right? Which is better for everyone. So for all these reasons, we really believe that Robusta will play a huge role in coffee's future.
Why did you name your brand Nguyen Coffee Supply?
Before I launched, I had two names. One is Tiger Coffee. Tiger Coffee. Because I'm the year of the tiger.
Oh, okay.
Or Nguyen Coffee Supply. And I remember around 2017, I was like, what should I name it? And I was like, Tiger Coffee is easy for Americans, right? It's easy to say. Tiger is strong. It's bold, like Vietnamese coffee. I'm the year of the tiger. But then I was like, but Nguyen Coffee Supply, it just says Vietnamese coffee without saying Vietnamese coffee. But then I was like, but will Americans understand it? Can they say Nguyen? Can they say Nguyen? Can they say Nguyen? Will it backfire on me? Are Americans ready for Nguyen Coffee Supply? Or should I call it Tiger Coffee, right? Palatable, approachable. And I decided to go with Nguyen Coffee Supply because this is part of how we create cultural change. This is how we uplift representation and how we position Vietnam with visibility. And because one of the problems I was trying to solve was lack of visibility and lack of representation, I leaned into Nguyen Coffee Supply so that we are immediately positioning Vietnam with representation and visibility on the shelf. And even though I had insecurities concerned around, well, is America ready for Nguyen Coffee Supply versus Tiger Coffee? I said, well, this is an opportunity for us to help people get ready, help people be more comfortable with culture.
From Dalat to New York, Vietnamese Robusta beans are being brewed in the middle of industrial Brooklyn under the watchful eye of Sahra Nguyen. The complex and caffeinated flavors of Vietnam are carefully crafted for the U.S. specialty coffee market to be shipped to hundreds of supermarkets in the country. However, the process has not always been this easy. In 2018, Sahra emptied her savings to start Nguyen Coffee Supply, only to have the growth of her small startup hampered by a global pandemic. To temporarily avert difficulties, she quickly turned to online retail and noticed the booming of home barista trend. Turning headwinds into tailwinds, she started educating the people on how to make Vietnamese coffee online.
Today, I'm going to show you how to make Vietnamese coffee using a traditional Vietnamese brew tool called the phene filter. It's called Café Phene, which is coffee brewed through the phene. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to pour a little bit of water to cover the gravity press by about 1/2 inch. And this part is called the bloom. And that's how you make Vietnamese coffee using the traditional phene filter. So good. So good. Cheers. Ding.
And the wider audience caught on. Her how-to video guides on making Vietnamese coffee gathered tons of support online, prompting some to learn more about the legacy yet rarely discovered taste from Vietnam. The effort ended up winning her the market share.
I think we're in the very first early stages of Robusta as a specialty beverage.
However, Sahra's goal is bigger than just importing Vietnamese coffee beans. She is also looking to spread Vietnam's coffee culture, one that is built upon the slow-paced coffee-making ritual, also known as the Phin method.
I love how easy it goes down.
Smooth,
yes,
right?
It's very, very smooth.
Visibility, representation, and equality are the future of specialty coffee making, and Sahra is pioneering it with the Vietnamese Robusta beans.
So you have to create like videos, right, to instruct people how to make coffee and to explain to them the value of Robusta. How did people respond to all of the videos?
Yeah. I found that people were very receptive to our videos and they were really excited to learn something new. And I found that, you know, people online, our community, our customers, were excited about learning about a new bean. They're excited about learning about the differences of Arabica and Robusta. Because the way we approach education was very open-minded and inclusive, and we encourage consumers to have their own opinion versus telling people, this is what you have to like, and this is the way to be a good coffee drinker.
Right.
Because when you do that, it actually creates coffee shaming, and it creates exclusivity. And so I think, and then from talking to a lot of consumers online and in person, people would say, oh, I'm not really a good coffee drinker because I don't really know how to extract coffee, all these things. And I noticed there was this like culture of coffee shaming, which we want to really break down because we approach education and videos and storytelling in a way that's very inviting, inclusive, and we say, how you want to make coffee is your way. If you want to use a scale, you can use a scale. If you want to use a spoon, you can use a spoon. We found that people were very receptive because our approach to educating people was very inclusive.
And I have to say, I enjoy watching your videos.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you brought out such a positive vibe to viewers, you know,
thank you.
and also the way you make coffee, I guess, is very different, you know, from the way they know. With the fin filter.
The fin filter, from the very beginning, it was very important for us as a company to introduce the fin filter as well to our consumers because that is our access point to culture, right? We had the coffee beans, which is one part of the business, but again, because we want to talk about the culture as well, we made sure we introduced the fin filter to consumers too.
Yeah.
So it's a little stronger than usual because Robusta has 2 times more caffeine than Arabica coffee beans.
There's a really delicious note of like a beautiful bitterness that's almost like a dark chocolate. And then I'm just getting velvet. It's so smooth and so beautiful.
My name is Sahra Nguyen. I'm the founder and CEO of Nguyen Coffee Supply, and we are a next generation Vietnamese coffee company.
Nguyen knows the importance of striking while the bean is hot. When the self-described activist entrepreneur started the first specialty Vietnamese coffee company in the United States 4 years ago.
My producing partner and other farmers I talked to, they're like so proud that his coffee beans made it to America. Hardest working guys in the coffee biz.
Yes. It is such an incredible feeling to see people enjoying Vietnamese coffee now. I'm so proud of my culture, my family heritage, so much to the point that I've named my company after my family name.
It's 5:30 a.m. and we are on our way to Cheddar News Studio.
This is Baker's dream assignment right here. We know he loves coffee, so okay. So Baker and I, our entire crew, we're up before the sun. So we need caffeine. We want it all.
Oh yeah.
So what'd you bring today?
That's how I prepped for my live TV interview, the Spectrum News, New York 1.
Welcome to News All Day. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Really, my mission is to help make the world a better place, and in this case, it's selling coffee.
If you've been following our journey since 2018 or earlier, you may remember how excited I was the very first time I imported our first green beans. When it comes to truly growing a brand, there are just no shortcuts around it.
My dream is to build the world's biggest coffee company rooted in the world's second largest source of coffee.
You already made your presence on many big outlets like CNN, New York Times, Bloomberg, and also the show with Drew Barrymore, right? Yeah. Does that help kind of encourage other Vietnamese companies or, you know, companies that elevate Vietnamese coffee to contribute more to this new narrative?
Yeah. Since we've started, I've seen so many more Vietnamese coffee companies led by Vietnamese and Vietnamese American people in America. It's such a beautiful thing to see our community really playing a big role in the coffee industry, right? I definitely think that all of the awareness and recognition that you mentioned, it both inspires other entrepreneurs to be part of the change because they're seeing that it's possible, and it also inspires non-Vietnamese folks, other influential people in the coffee industry to join our movement as well. Right. So for example, Blue Bottle Coffee, they're considered a veteran in the specialty coffee industry in America. They're one of the very first specialty coffee companies in America. They've been around for over 20 years. This past January was the very, very first time in all of their 20 plus years they released a Vietnamese Robusta coffee blend, right? And that is a signal and a sign that more coffee companies, even the really big ones, are coming on board and they're changing their minds and they're participating in the change.
Right, they acknowledge the new trend.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Are you afraid of competitions then, when more and more
No, I'm not.
players joining the...
Definitely not, because we need more and more players to uplift Vietnamese coffee, right? I cannot do that alone, right? We want to change the world. We want to make Vietnamese coffee and the Vietnamese coffee industry famous in the world. I cannot do that alone, right? And we need more and more people sharing this message, working in New York, in California, in Denver, in Kansas City, in San Francisco, in Seattle, Washington, educating all of their communities about Vietnamese coffee.
Right.
We need everyone to work together to, one, grow the category of Vietnamese coffee in America, grow the category of Robusta coffee in America, and three, to elevate the mission and the story, right? And so, and I think in business in general, like, competition is good, right? Competition encourages innovation. It pushes you to stay ahead, right? I never feel threatened about competition. It's healthy, and it's actually very necessary for us to achieve the global change that we want.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Many foreign trading partners select Sahra's Vietnamese coffee products for sale in American supermarkets. Typically, coffee beans Sahra imports from Sơn La are worth nearly $48 per kilogram in America, equivalent to almost 1,100,000 Vietnam dong, nearly twice as much as in Vietnam. Due to Sơn La's special climate and soil advantages, this was one of the areas from which Sahra chose to import into the US the high-quality raw coffee beans that meet the standard of VietGap.
I think Sơn La is really at the forefront of some really exciting Arabica production in the world. What I appreciate about the Arabica beans in Sơn La is that it's not too acidic and it's still very, very smooth, right? Yeah, I find that to be the case with a lot of the Arabicas in Sơn La. It's both fruit forward and smooth, which is very unique about Arabica from Sơn La. The really rich soil in Sơn La produces really unique flavors in the Arabica beans here that you won't find anywhere else in the world.
In addition to promoting the Vietnamese coffee brand, Sahra Nguyen constantly wishes to raise the living standards of Vietnamese coffee farmers, especially ethnic group women in Sơn La. Thanks to the International Women's Coffee Alliance in Vietnam, or IWCA Vietnam, connecting coffee buyers and sellers, Sahra was able to donate new coffee varieties and provide professional training for many women farmers to help improve their living standards.
Mời chị em vào trong nhà.
Dạ vâng.
Em thì cũng rất là vui khi được tham gia cà phê phụ nữ và được chị em ở nước ngoài quan tâm. Trước đây thì chưa có họ chẳng ai nói đến cà phê phụ nữ. Họ không biết là phụ nữ thì đi sau thôi.
Cái này là lần đầu tiên em xuống Sơn La đó. Em cũng mua cà phê của chị, của tất cả phụ nữ nông dân ở đây mấy năm rồi mà chưa bao giờ được gặp á. Thì em rất là mừng được gặp chị, tại vì chị hàng tất cả mỗi người ở Sơn La đó đang thay đổi cái industry cà phê Việt Nam đó, làm cho nó cà phê nó tốt hơn, xong làm cho cà phê Việt Nam có tiếng lớn hơn ở ngoài nước Việt Nam á. Em cảm ơn chị.
Không biết nói gì, em chỉ mong là chị em thì mọi người được uống cà phê thì ủng hộ mua cà phê giá cao cho bọn em để bà con chị em phụ nữ có tiền lo cho cuộc sống. Em thì xa xôi đến lần đầu tiên gặp với nhau thì chị không có gì đâu, chị tặng em cái
cảm ơn chị.
Thanks to the support of IWCA Vietnam, Sahra has helped more than 140 ethnic women in the mountainous area of Sơn La. IWCA also organizes coffee eco-tours in which ethnic women are the tour guides, thereby improving their lives.
are very interested in helping elevate women, right, and their role in everything, in doing business. Why do you have such interest?
Well, I think, one, I am a woman myself, and I think women, for me, my personal experience as a woman in the U.S., I think women in general often experience inequity, often experience discrimination. Women are often underestimated, or women do not receive all the resources or investment to support their careers, their journeys. And women are the backbone of the coffee industry, right? A majority of farmers in Vietnam are women, right? So if we want to empower and uplift the coffee industry, we have to focus on the women.
Right. And also, during your trip, you visited the Thai women, right? And you observed their very special way of harvesting coffee. They handpicked the coffee rather than,
grabbing it.
Yeah, grabbing it. Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you think about it?
It's beautiful, and it's really huge props and credit to folks like IWCA Vietnam, who are spending the time to educate the women, right, in Sơn La about how to handpick the red ripe cherries, on how to produce specialty coffee so that they can then get a better wage for their coffee beans, right? It's so powerful to see the collaboration, the partnership from women all around the world, from whether it's us in the US or folks in IWCA here, and then folks on the ground in Sơn La.
So you mentioned about the fourth wave of coffee. Explain to us this concept, fourth wave of coffee, and why do you believe in it?
Yeah. So we believe the fourth wave of coffee is rooted in culture, right? If I go backwards, the first wave of coffee in America is defined by like mass market, mass commodity coffee, like instant coffee or ground coffee at home. The second wave of coffee in America is understood as like the to-go model, like Dunkin' Donuts, like Starbucks, right? The third wave of coffee is defined by brands like Blue Bottle and Stumptown, where there was a focus now on single origin, on species in different varietals, in different processing methods, right? There was greater transparency there. Because before, during the second wave, when you ordered a Dunkin' or Starbucks, you didn't know anything about the coffee you were drinking. You didn't know where the coffee was from or how it was grown or processed. And the third wave is all about what variety, what species, where is it from, how is it grown, how is it processed. A lot of focus on the bean in the third wave, right? Which was very amazing and excellent for the innovation in coffee. We believe the fourth wave, the next wave of coffee, is to build upon the innovation of the bean and to also be inclusive of the culture, right? Let's talk about the culture at origin. Let's talk about the people and communities at origin. And so this is what we are promoting in our mission.
I think before, maybe in the third wave, people think that the culture and the knowledge about the bean is added value. But now I think that added value is becoming more and more important.
Yes.
And maybe the key value.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
To help foreigners learn more about Vietnamese coffee culture, Sahra Nguyen and her family spent times visiting her hometown and experiencing sidewalk coffee culture in Hanoi. Every place Sahra Nguyen goes to gives her lots of unique coffee experiences.
Oh, cool. Can you show me?
Yeah.
Cái này nó attached hả? Hay là... Yeah.
It's have the press.
Yeah.
The coffee go out.
Yeah.
You can see like the plate.
Yeah, the press. And it goes in here. 1-to-2 ratio, so it's super strong.
Yeah, it's strong.
Yeah.
Stronger than the other coffee.
Yeah. It's a beautiful color. So like, ở nước Mỹ, ở New York, tại vì ở Việt Nam á, chị thấy cái trứng nó rất là đặc biệt. Tại vì cái dốt nó tươi.
Vâng,
bởi
vì là chỉ có ở Việt Nam mới có.
Đúng rồi.
Ở mọi nơi thì họ sẽ cấp đông.
Đúng rồi.
Không thể cấp đông, nếu mà cấp đông thì nó sẽ bị
màu vàng, đúng không? Đúng rồi. Còn màu tươi, đúng rồi.
The bold taste of black coffee, the richness of egg coffee, a little salty taste of salted coffee. These are what piqued Sahra's curiosity and interest when drinking coffee in Hanoi. While wandering among the street stalls, Sahra Nguyen clearly sees the diversity in Vietnamese coffee, and also how Vietnamese people take a sip from their coffee cups shows Sahra a unique difference compared to the American coffee culture.
This is delicious. It's so good. It's really, really bold and strong. Some notes of dark chocolate and nuts, but also a little sweetness, right? Everything is like very harmonious.
This will wake you up.
Wanting to experience many types of coffee made with different methods, Sarah continued her quest to find a famous specialty coffee shop in Hanoi's Old Quarter.
Ooh, tapa, thank you.
From her experience with different types of coffee shops, from sidewalk cafes to modern cafes, Sarah can see the great potential of the Vietnamese coffee industry.
So after trying so many different types of coffee, made Vietnamese way, what did you think? Has it experience broadened your view of Vietnamese coffee here?
Definitely. I mean, I've always felt that Vietnam has one of the most exciting coffee cultures in the world. Because I feel like Vietnam's coffee culture is very expansive, it's very creative, it's very divergent, right? The coffee menu across cafes in Vietnam, it's so broad, right? And the coffee culture here is very broad. You can have sidewalk coffee to specialty coffee culture, right? It's such a broad range. Whereas from my experience in the United States, the coffee culture is not as broad. It's more common, where a lot of the coffee shops that you go into, they all kind of like present the same menu, right? So there's less divergence, less creativity there.
Right, yeah. For example, here you have coconut coffee, you have egg coffee, you mix so many different ingredients into coffee to make it a new drink.
Yes.
Yeah, while in the US or other countries, you have quite a standard.
A standard, yes.
Standard, yeah.
Yes, we are seeing that change now with this next wave that we're pushing. However, you're right. A lot of third wave coffee was centered around a standard. There was this idea of coffee purism, right? Because there was so much focus on the bean.
Right.
And there's a coffee standard like, this is the best way to enjoy this coffee. And the idea of like adding sugar to it or other flavors or other ingredients to it, it was kind of frowned upon in a lot of specialty coffee shops, because they're like, you're not focusing on the purity of the coffee.
Okay.
And so that was the standard, but that's not how everybody wants to drink coffee, right? Some people like their coffee black. Some people like their coffee with milk and sugar. Some people like it with 4 pumps of vanilla, And I think just now with this new growth of Vietnamese coffee shops around America, we're seeing more creative drinks like pandan coffee, coconut coffee, egg coffee, banana coffee. People are now starting to bring inspiration from Vietnam into coffee menus in the U.S.
Right. So since you were here, you witnessed how people make coffee the Vietnamese way. Do you think of maybe integrating the recipes, some of the recipes you've learned here to the U.S.?
Definitely. So sharing creative drink recipes has been a really big part of our company's mission and strategy for the last couple of years. So we produce new recipes all the time on our website, on our blog, and on our social media. Everything from strawberry coffee, pandan coffee, ube coffee, coffee Negroni. We are always developing new creative drink recipes and sharing with our audiences because we want to encourage them to be creative and to have fun with their coffee.
Sahra Nguyen was born and raised in Boston, America, but her parents are Vietnamese. Sahra was born in 1986 and has always been aware of her Vietnamese origins. She inherited her grandfather's passion for coffee, which helped her build a Vietnamese coffee brand in America. Her childhood memories of her grandfather with a cup of filtered coffee inspired her to pursue her dream of building a Vietnamese coffee company.
When I was really, really young, my parents brought me to visit my grandparents in Hanoi. My very, very first memory of Vietnamese coffee was with my grandfather. Him and his friends would hang out all day drinking café phin. And I remember seeing like the coffee dripping from the phin filter and just like the house would smell of this amazing, rich, chocolatey coffee. So that was one of my earliest memories around Vietnamese coffee, watching my grandfather drink coffee.
Although Sahra didn't spend much of her upbringing in Hanoi, she has always felt a deep connection to Vietnamese culture. The love for Vietnamese coffee has become the key to connecting the women to her spiritual homeland. During this visit to Vietnam, Sahra had the opportunity to become a traditional Vietnamese bride with her fiancé.
Em nghĩ màu gì nó traditional nhất cho Việt Nam, cho văn hóa Việt Nam?
Nếu mà văn hóa Việt Nam thì mình có thể chọn sang màu đỏ,
Ok.
màu trắng.
Chắc anh này mặc màu xanh, xanh chắc chị muốn mặc màu đỏ.
Nó cũng khá là hợp họa tiết.
Có hai cái con phoenix, right? This is so beautiful. Oh my god. Pretty. I love it. You know, we're getting married in June, and we really wanted to do a set of photos to celebrate Vietnamese culture and celebrate the city where my father is from, and to dress up in these really cool áo dài.
Sarah's opened my eyes. I genuinely feel like, I've been to Vietnam a couple times now, more than 3 times, and from the small things to the food, to the culture, to the coffee, to traveling from the farms and just being really immersed in the culture. Vietnam is a beautiful place to be.
Along with a burning desire to nurture her Vietnamese side, the people and culture of Vietnam also motivate Sahra to convey Vietnam's innovations and developments through her actions.
So after all of the experiences with Vietnam, now what does Vietnam mean to you?
I've always felt like Vietnam was a part of me. I've been fortunate enough to grow up coming back to Vietnam often and having relatives here and spending so much of my childhood and my upbringing with my relatives, with my cousins in Vietnam. So I've always felt like Vietnam was a part of who I was. And I think having that deep connection to Vietnam in the culture, in the community, in the society here has really inspired me to do what I can in my position as an American-born person, in my position as a U.S. citizen, to use my platform, my knowledge, my resources to do what I can to elevate communities where I can, or whether that's my family, whether that's the coffee industry, whether that's just culture in general, right? And so I feel like I have this unique opportunity to connect parts of the world. Right. Because I'm so deeply connected to Vietnam because of my family. I have a love and appreciation for the culture. Right. I can speak, read, and write Vietnamese, which has allowed me to do business here and connect better with the culture here. And I can also convey that culture and all the exciting innovation developments happening here to the rest of the world. Right. And so what does Vietnam mean to me? I just feel like Vietnam is just a part of me. And in being who I am, my goal is just to be a better version every day. And part of my personal mission is to do what I can to build compassion and empathy between communities so that we can just work together to elevate and empower all communities around the world.
Beautifully said. So you already shared your vision for your brand, which is to build the most influential Vietnamese coffee brand in the world.
Yes.
So how far have you have you gone now with that vision?
Great question. I definitely feel like we've gotten the attention of the industry, both the United States and Vietnam. Thank you for having me. I feel like our mission and our presence as a company is deeply felt, especially in the U.S. Coffee industry and the U.S. culture. So I feel like that has been a huge milestone for us of just having this elevated awareness for Vietnam's coffee industry and our mission. Now the next step is expanding on that awareness to have distribution. So that includes this year our new effort to expand to over 500 retail stores across the country is the next step. And then after that is to expand into over like 10,000 stores in the United States, and then eventually to have international presence and distribution around the world.
Yeah. Wow, with a population of 300 million in the US, I definitely have confidence that is a vast market, and also in Europe and maybe other countries as well.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Sahra, for
you.
joining us today. I feel very inspired by your story, by your courage, and your spirit.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for sharing your platform with me and giving me the opportunity to share my story.
Thank you. From journalist to business owner, surely Sahra Nguyen knows how to use storytelling to change the narrative of Vietnamese Robusta bean in the global coffee scene. So I hope through her story, you understand more about Vietnamese coffee and the opportunities Vietnam have to contribute to the global coffee culture. I also hope that for those who want to take that very first step in doing what you want, in walking into the unknown, you'll have more courage to do so. So let's wrap up this edition of Talk Vietnam here with lots of positive energy, and see you next time.